Tenda Mwari, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai, Mudzimo, Mokoro, we give him praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodli, African power and African liberation for all African people. Greetings and welcome, brothers and sisters, to a bit of an impromptu media geopolitical analysis that we're going to engage in today under the title of the hypocrisy of white power. The hypocrisy of white power. Plenty things are going on in the world, brothers and sisters. And today, I was watching Prime Minister's questions in the UK, and something, was highlighted for me, so I'm going to address it today. We're here to know that the UK election has been called for the 4th of July, and so enough things are going on as far as UK politics is concerned, and you'll be able to get some analysis on those dynamics right here on gotkushTV, so do stay tuned for more, yeah? But today, while I was watching Prime Minister's questions, an interesting question was asked by a particular MP. And I was interested in it, so I thought, let me do an analysis of it right here now for the brothers and sisters, okay? So let's take in the question that the MP asked in Parliament only a few hours ago.
The International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor is seeking arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders for war crimes and crimes against humanity. This House does not aid and abet Hamas, but it does aid and abet Israel through arms sales like components for Israeli F-35s, known as the most lethal fighter jet on earth, which are raining down hell on Gaza. So, will the Prime Minister uphold international law, drop the nonsense about the most robust licensing system in the world, and end arms sales to Israel? And if the ICC issues arrest warrants, will he comply and ensure that these individuals are arrested if they enter the UK?
So, as you heard, and forgive me because I forget the MP's name, but she's asked, this is a Labour MP, MP representing the Labour Party in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. For those who are not aware of UK politics, Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister representing the Conservative Party. So these are the opposing two major parties in the UK. And so she's asked the question based upon the fact that there are prosecutors at the International Criminal Court who are seeking arrest warrants for leading members of Hamas, the authority that governs Gaza at the moment, and leading members of the Israeli government and defense forces, for crimes, for war crimes committed in the recent upheavals that have, basically been situated at the beginning at the 7th of October, 2023. That, beginning date is erroneous, but that's another subject for another time. Okay, so she's contextualized her question based upon the fact that the UK government does not in fact support Hamas. The UK government doesn't support Hamas diplomatically. The UK government doesn't support Hamas politically. The UK government doesn't support Hamas financially, and the UK government doesn't secure arms in relation to Hamas. Okay, but it does do all of these things in relation to Israel. Very important context. She's gone on to say, that's where the foolishness about the most definitive and robust licensing laws. Yes? For those who are not aware, what that is referring to is the fact that when questioned about the fact that the UK government may be culpable for war crimes because of the fact that it is involved in the supplying of arms to Israel, the response of the UK government has generally been, we do not directly supply arms to Israel in the same way that the American government does. What happens in the UK is that arms are indirectly supplied, and it is true to say that the amount of arms supplied to Israel as far as the UK is concerned, or through the UK, is far less than those supplied by the American government and the American administration. What the UK government does, however, it has licensing laws, yes? And so it basically it puts a restriction on the kinds of arms and the amount of arms and who the arms can go to, and its licensing laws govern those things. And so British-based corporations are able to supply arms to Israel without direct involvement of the UK government. The UK government just simply, creates the framework for licensing, which allows the arms sales to take place. And so what the MP is saying is that's what them argument and them foolishness about UK licensing laws and how robust they are. And basically abide by international law and stop supplying arms to Israel and call for an immediate ceasefire, etc., etc., etc. That is what this woman is referring to at the moment. She's also highlighted the fact that if any members of Hamas or the Israeli administration find themselves in the UK because of the fact that, unlike America and Israel, Britain, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, is in fact a signatory to the International Criminal Court. The UK government will be required by international law to arrest those individuals and hand them over to the International Criminal Court for trial. So she's asking the Prime Minister whether he's going to abide by the UK government's responsibility as a member state of the International Criminal Court. Let's take in Rishi Sunak's answer.
Mr. Speaker, always nice to see the Change Labour Party in action.
All right, so necessary to explain that particular true award shot, that he just threw a minute ago. And as you can see, the MP seated next to MP Bel Ribeiro Addy, who recently, made a request for reparations some months ago in the UK Parliament. Also necessary to note that are saying shame on you. What Rishi Sunak is doing here, he's playing the political game. Under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party was found to have significant elements of anti-Semitism within its ranks. They were charged with this, investigations were done, and the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn was found to be anti-Semitic. And so since, and that was a very controversial ruling, but that's another subject for another time. But since then, Keir Starmer has taken over and vowed to change the Labour Party and weed out the anti-Semitism. And so his claim to fame, to a significant degree, is that he has been able to do so. All right? We're not going to go into the details of that today. But his claim to fame and his calling card is that he is the leader of the changed Labour Party. And so the sarcastic comment by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is in fact designed to throw the label of anti-Semitism at the MP for even asking the question. In other words, that her asking the question is a reflection of the continued anti-Semitism of the Labour Party. The idea that you agree with the fact that members of the Israeli government can and should be tried for war crimes makes you automatically an anti-Semite, a hater of Jews. That's what that particular true award is designed to evoke, brothers and sisters. Let's go forward to hear the rest of the Prime Minister's answer.
When it comes to the ICC, this is a deeply unhelpful development, Mr. Speaker, which is, of course, still subject to a final decision. There is no moral equivalence between a democratically elected government exercising its lawful right to self-defense and the actions of a terrorist group. And the actions of the ICC do absolutely nothing to get a pause in the fighting, to get the hostages out, or aid in.
So let's dissect that answer right there, brothers and sisters. He began by stating that a decision is still need to be made. The ICC prosecutors have put forward their proposal to the ICC judges, and then the judges are going to rule as to whether those arrest warrants will be actually actioned or not. Okay? But the centerpiece of his argument and his answer to the question is that there is no moral equivalence between Hamas, a terrorist organization, and Israel, a democratic nation. The hypocrisy of white power, brothers and sisters. The hypocrisy of white power. Why is this an act of hypocrisy? This answer, by the way, has been replicated all over the Western world, particularly in Britain and America, by any number of politicians and media personalities. The idea that the fact that the ICC prosecutors want to direct their prosecution at Hamas members as well as Israeli members of the Israeli government and armed forces suggests that there is a moral equivalency between the two forces. First of all, the hypocrisy begins with the fact that moral equivalency is a non-issue. Hamas does not need to be the same as the IDF or the Israeli government in order for both of those institutions to have committed war crimes. Equivalency is not a prerequisite of criminality or being charged with crimes. The issue is rule of law. And the hypocrisy comes within the context of the fact that these nations are the ones that go around the world. I tell people, say they are the land of the free and the home of the brave. These nations are the ones that have put in place institutions such as the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, the United Nations, etc., etc., etc. These are the powers that have instituted and enforced international law based upon rule of law, not moral equivalency. So therefore, moral equivalency should not be an issue. Now, bear in mind, that I think most people would accept that there is not an equivalency between Hamas on the one hand and Israel government on the other. We'll get into why that is a little bit more in the session. Okay? However, necessary to note this political wrangling, that they repeat this narrative frequently in order to give it an air of respectability so that us, the general public, in this instance, accept this as a legitimate argument. It is not. But they must say it anyway. Alright? The hypocrisy of white power, brothers and sisters, is a very consistent phenomenon. Yes? It tends to be replicated all over the institutions that are invested in the maintenance and perpetuation of white power. Yeah, but let's check out another video. Now, lead prosecutor in the ICC, a man by the name of Karim Khan, was recently interviewed on CNN by Amanpour, Christian Amanpour. And he was asked about statements, by the US government in response to the prosecutors seeking arrest warrants for the individuals in Hamas and Israel. And these members of the American government were incensed by the fact not that Hamas warrants were sought against Hamas leaders, but that Israel was also prosecuted against in relation to their findings. And so Amanpour asked a question based upon a letter that was written to the ICC on behalf of a certain number of Republican politicians. Yeah, and listen to his answer very carefully.
I'm going to read you some heavy criticism that you've received from the United States. As we know, the United States is not a party to the ICC, nor is Israel. Recently, when word came out that this may be happening at some point, US senators and US congresspeople, mostly Republicans, wrote you a letter signed by Senator Tom Cotton, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and others. This is the quote: "Target Israel and we will target you. If you move forward with the measures indicated in the report, we will move to end all American support for the ICC, sanction your employees and associates, and bar you and your families from the United States. You have been warned." Is that a threat?
I wonder if you don't hear what go on just a while ago. Yeah, I wonder if you don't hear what go on just a while ago. Members of the American establishment have vowed to put sanctions on the International Criminal Court that has jurisdiction for maintaining international law that the American government has helped to institute and enforce on the world stage. Members of the American government will charge other nations, for example, in this moment, Vladimir Putin, as being contraveners of international law, and therefore, as a result, worthy of being brought before the International Criminal Court. Now they're going to put sanctions not on a nation, but on a transnational institution that they have been responsible for using to try and convict others. But the answer to the question of whether this is a threat on the part of the American politicians is a very interesting one. Look at taking the answer.
I think that's the plain meaning of it in English. But, you know, there's hotheads everywhere, and there's people that are mature statesmen and stateswomen and leaders. There are those that have fidelity to something greater than themselves, whether it's their constitutions, but ultimately it's the rule of law. The good news is, I think, for the last 2.5 years, we've had very positive engagement with the Biden administration in the United States. We're working across a range of situations, whether it's in Ukraine or Darfur. And I've said to distinguished members on the Hill and to the administration that Rome Statute values are quintessential American values. It's against bullying. It's against the untrammeled power against the most vulnerable. It's the rights, the dignity of the individual. It's the protection of babies. I mean, these are fundamental American values that should engender bipartisan support. Now, of course, this situation, unfortunately, lies on the San Andreas fault of international politics and strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry, to something bigger than ourselves, which is the fidelity to justice. And we're not going to be swayed by the different types of threats, some of which are public and some maybe are not.
Very, very interesting answer where the man just gave a while ago. Make we pull up to one section very quickly. Hold on there.
Lies on the San Andreas fault of international politics and strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me.
The man say one senior leader of a government, brothers and sisters, in today's world openly said to him that the International Criminal Court was created for Africa and thugs like Putin. The hypocrisy of white power. When you look at the history of the International Criminal Court, the International Criminal Court was effectively brought into being in the year 1998 by something called the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute basically brings the ICC into being, but it wasn't really fully formed until the year 2002. And from that time until the year 2016, everybody that was brought before the ICC was from the African continent. Me say everybody up until 2016 that was brought before the ICC, the International Criminal Court, was from the African continent, all but one of whom was from so-called sub-Saharan Africa. That's ridiculous terminology, by which they really mean Black Africa. The other one was Libya, North Africa. So, the prosecutor is saying that there are politicians in today's world who are openly stating what we didn't know from a long time, that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is in fact a tool and a weapon for Western imperialism. That it was designed to be a weapon for maintaining and forwarding the interest of white power, of white nations in today's world, brothers and sisters. And what's happening in the ICC is that there are those who realize, hold on, we're going to lose credibility. Yeah? If we allow that agenda to run things to the fullest of extent. There's enough voices in there that recognize, hold on, in order to maintain even a little bit of legitimacy, we can't just make the people that run wild all over the world without any recompense. So something have to go on, at least somebody in Israel have to get charged alongside Hamas, because it's not going to look good. That they must say. And then there are those who are fighting against that, saying, well, hold on, no, this was designed to be a weapon in our favor to pursue our own interest. That's the war that is taking place at the ICC at the minute. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's any less an instrument of white power, It just means that some of them realize that they have to play the political game, at least to an extent. And this issue allows them to do so, brothers and sisters. But the Western world is saying, no moral equivalence. In other words, if you are deemed to be our friend, if you are deemed to be on the pale of civilization as dictated by us, we are going to protect you. We are going to fund you. We are going to provide you diplomatic immunity on the world stage. These are the nations that claim to be the bringers, the providers of human rights, democracy, rule of law, civil rights. These are the nations that claim to be the bastions of freedom. individual rights, liberalism. Yet, when one of them is so obviously acting in contravention of the laws that they have established and imposed upon the world, they all come together to defend that nation, the hypocrisy of white power. But I thought it would be good to just get an understanding of exactly what these ICC prosecutors are concerned about. Yeah? And in the interview, this chief prosecutor outlined some of the context and the situation in Gaza that has been a cause for concern for them.
A very complex operation. It's not just the denial of aid. It's not only the fact that as an occupying power, Israel has an affirmative obligation to make sure food and the objects indispensable to survival get to the civilians. They have an affirmative obligation. They're in control of the north of Gaza, for example. IDF tanks are in situ. They could guard aid convoys going in and making sure it goes to the camps. They're not doing that. But in addition, one has to look at a wider aspect. Water has been cut off. Electricity has been, plants have been either destroyed or targeted. Fuel can't go in. Desalination plants are completely dysfunctional. There's no desalination plant in the north of Gaza at all. Water purification tablets, filtration systems have been classified as dual-use objects, as have incubators, as has oxygen for hospital, as have anesthetics. One sees 90% of all the greenhouses in the north of Gaza destroyed. 40% of the land that was used for agriculture has been destroyed since the conflict started. 70% of the fishing vessels. I mean, every avenue that is so important to human survival has been constrained or suffocated because of a policy. And the words of the Secretary General of the United Nations, which said we're at breaking point, the words of UNICEF, the words of UNRWA, saying that we've got a trickle of aid in a sea of need, all of these giants of the international system, their words, their concerns have been put to one side, unfortunately, in the face of other imperatives and what seems to be a bid also for the collective punishment of the people of Gaza.
Very, very interesting rundown, litany, yes, of the alleged crimes against the state of Israel. We want to remind ourselves, that not only Israeli officials have been, attempted to be brought to justice, Hamas members have also, as far as this ICC prosecution or attempted prosecution is concerned, But he has made a point, which is the fact that Israel is an occupying power in that it occupies Gaza. Israel can control what comes in and out of Gaza via land, sea, and air. Now that's interesting partly because there are many politicians and media personalities in the Western world who would deny that claim, that they would say that Israel is not a occupying power, which is obviously false. But on the point of equivalency, there is no equivalency. Israel is a recognized state with an established army. Gaza is not a state and does not have an established army. Israel can control what comes in and out of Gaza via land, sea, and air. Hamas cannot control anything that comes in and out of Israel via any means. Israel is funded to the tunes of billions by Western powers. Hamas is not funded to anywhere near the same extent by anybody. So there is no equivalence on many levels. between these nations. But according to them law, what them impose upon the world, moral equivalency should be a non-factor and a non-issue in these dynamics. The only question really should be, are your actions in contravention of what them call international law? And the fact that they are seeking to ensure that certain nations on the world stage are able and have the opportunity to act with impunity in relation to the laws that they have established to govern the world. The fact that they are seeking to ensure that this particular nation, which is their friend, is able to act and behave in a way that demonstrates that they are in fact beyond and above the jurisdiction of the institutions that they have created, is an act of hypocrisy. As African people, we should pay attention to the fact that this particular prosecutor has stated openly that there are leading politicians in today's world that have told him openly that this institution, the International Criminal Court, was created for Africa. The hypocrisy of white power. We have to pay attention to that as African people and organize ourselves accordingly in relation to these institutions that govern global politics and economics. Just a brief analysis of some geopolitics taking place in today's world, brothers and sisters. If you are not subscribed to gotkushTV, do subscribe to gotkushTV, and no doubt we'll be bringing you more in the coming months and the coming years. We say Tenda Mwadi, we thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Muzimu Makulu. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation to all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.